Treniss, thank you for coming back. Welcome back to everyone on the Truth Matters show. Uh, Tina Peters obviously still in prison, but she has an awesome group of people who are supporting her on the legal side. And it was announced that Peter Tickton is now volunteered to be involved, and American Rights Alliance is also involved. So Treniss, given that you are part of that team, if you want to just give us a quick update about who you guys are and some of the updates going on regarding Tina's appeal on the state side and on the federal side regarding the habeas and the amicus brief. Because I know there's some confusion about that, and I just want everyone to understand that people are trying to get Tina out, and there are things happening, but justice moves on a donkey. So
Yeah, so to your comment there, Apollo, the quick version is that the injustice, the wheels of injustice turn rather rapidly, as we have seen with the Tina Peters case, while the wheels of justice turn much slower. Unfortunately, it's a painstaking process, and that's being done. I will say this, that it is being done at every turn, dotted every I and crossed every T. That's one of the reasons that Mr. Tickton was brought into the case, and that came in through American Rights Alliance. And we're representing that interest. So as Peter is lead counsel and American Rights Alliance doing investigative work, of course, I'm a paralegal and legal investigator for Mr. Tickton and American Rights Alliance. So to be clear, a lot of people have some confusion as it relates to Tina and talking about those wheels of injustice that have turned so quickly when the wheels of justice are turning what seemingly to so slow. I think it's important for people to recognize that Ms. Peters' case is being addressed by the administration. Ms. Peters' case is absolutely being addressed. Peter Tickton coming as lead counsel and Stephanie Lambert, John Case, Pat McSweeney, and a host of others are doing a fantastic job. The legal work was certainly nothing but first rate already. And Peter came in and gave his additions to that legal work as both the habeas and the appellate brief. We're excited that we have the opportunity to come in and assist with that legal team and with Tina Peters. Now, what people have a hard time understanding is why has Trump not pardoned her? Some people have asked this question of me, and I think you guys get this as well. This is a state case. Tina Peters was tried in the state of Colorado, convicted in the state of Colorado, and imprisoned by Colorado state officials in a Colorado state prison. So while it's unjust, it's wrong, and it certainly should have met the same fate that Norma Jean Anderson case, which was a Colorado ballot case, and others met with being case. It was notified to them, the state of Colorado, that this was a federal matter. This is in the same realm. So if you remember, we talked about that time and again as I came on the show back when Tina was still hosting. And it breaks my heart that she's not here. And as I've had the opportunity to talk to her sometimes and hear her voice and but more so we all understand her plight and her message, and this message that was born of the Biden administration and the corrupt collaboration that went on with the state of Colorado is hanging Tina on the wall as Maoist did. And how do we say, what do you mean by that? Well, because the FBI conducted the original raid on her home. The DOJ was part and parcel to the investigation that took place. If she committed these heinous crimes, as it's been said, then why is it that the federal government didn't charge her? Why were these state cases? And I contend, as well known, that they needed the cover of a state case because the federal case would have met with the same problem with the recent verdict of Norma Jean Anderson, which is the Colorado ballot case for Trump, where they tried to remove him from the ballot. So knowing that and understanding it, I think they played their cards wiser, recognizing that their election corruption was in jeopardy, and election corruption remaining in jeopardy would have meant that there could have been federal exposure on this issue. So they kept it in-house and state. No one's investigating anything. No one's reviewing anything. However, this Department of Justice, the Attorney General's office, at Pam Bondi's office, and others have taken a significant interest in this. The Department of Justice is now taking a significant interest as directed by those higher powers. And I believe that we're going to see some movement on this very quickly. Likely, it's probably quicker than the movement we're going to see from either the habeas or the appellate brief that Tina Peters, in fact, does become a whistleblower. Some of the components, I think, had some carryovers into the Lindell case. as they do Clay Clark and others of these cases with the voting machines and the individuals that have sued people. I believe that some of this information that was flushed out is going to be valuable to Tina. But more importantly, there's other things afoot that are going on where exposure of this issue is coming into purview. Ms. Peters had a right and a duty to preserve election data. I think that's a point that everybody understands. The problem is Colorado didn't want her to. They said, well, she didn't follow a chain of command, or she didn't respect the chain of command. Well, the problem is if you believe those above you, a reasonable suspicion, right, or a um, just cause for said suspicion, then you would at that point have a duty to do whatever is necessary to preserve that data. If it is a federal election, regardless of what Colorado wants, components of it were federal. It's very frustrating and troubling that the state of Colorado continued this prosecution. The only cover that they have on this is the idea that Miss Peters is a criminal and did, in fact, misrepresent issues to her superior chain of command, essentially, right? And operate unbeknownst to them. Like it's just she was doing something in secret. She didn't have to. Once she believed that those people were either engaged in potential criminal or conspiratorial criminal efforts, then her good faith reasoning should kick in and allow her the presence of mind and the ability and her duty under her oath to pursue this event as she did, because she didn't know where else to go, fearing corruption or illegal activity or criminality that may be surrounding the event. So, preservation of the data shouldn't have been a problem. Here we are today, though, and Miss Peters remains in prison. Not only that, but the sentencing structure and this word spoken at the sentencing certainly lend themselves to constitutional or civil rights violations. And I think that is something that yet the habeas will have some flush out, and the appellate brief will flush some of that out. Hopefully, we don't have to wait that long. And we'd like to see the government. I remember, Tina and I talking about President Trump's promise to Miss Peters that when this was all over, she'd be a hero, and unfortunately, we're not at that silver lining on this dark horizon just yet. I do believe we're headed there quickly with the actions that have taken place. You've seen now that the Department of Justice has ordered the state of Colorado to preserve all 2020 election data and information. That means an investigation has opened, the open investigation, or at least they've been notified of the investigation. I know that investigation began much sooner. I was talking with people, and I'm hesitant to say where, but members of the administration and those, the DOJ and Department Attorney General's office, that were working on this issue, that were reviewing and investigating this issue and giving it its due diligence. One thing that I would caution is I'm sure the administration does not want to say this is a whistleblower in a federal investigation, and then ultimately it's undone some way, somehow, or the components aren't correct and it's been done incorrectly, and she ends up returned to prison after becoming a federal whistleblower. So the right
Yeah,
course of
that's
action.
what I don't mean to interrupt. I just want to really hammer that point home because there's a lot of frustration, and understandably so. I mean, believe me, everyone here is just as upset that she's still in there as well. But if things are not done, in the right order, at the right timing, my biggest fear for some time has been it would just turn into another battle like we've seen all over the country between state courts and whatever, and then she gets caught up, and it's now like she's a game piece between a federal versus state jurisdictional issue that they have loved to weaponize over and over again. So for Tina's sake, I think it's equally as important that things are done very, very properly.
You're 100% right on that aspect, Paulo. This has been a big conversation behind the scenes with the legal team about if this happens, it has to happen and it has to deliver finality, right? That you don't want to take a shot at this and be wrong. And I'm sure the administration wants to be right. They don't want to be undermined yet again with corruption and et cetera. So we're going to make sure this is 100%. And while we know the components lean in Tina's favor, when you're conducting an investigation, when you're pulling together information, when you're seeking a resolution, and you're going to be dealing in states' rights, and you're going to, which we all believe in because it's constitutional. It's not a state's right, though, to subvert the will of the people, to subvert the Constitution and utilize lawfare to go after someone who did their job and under their oath of office. So that is not a state's right. So that is where you get into this becoming one of the aspects of it becoming a federal matter.
So on that point, because you mentioned the habeas several times, I know there's been, and again, some confusion. I think I have a pretty clear understanding of it, but since they've kind of thrown this back and said they didn't exhaust all of the state remedies at that level, there's some people who have questions about the amicus brief, and that's been somewhat, I don't want to say annulled. Like, will something like that have to be refiled, or
Yeah.
is this investigation really going to kind of take care of all that?
The amicus brief could have gone on to be filed again. The problem was, is American Rights Alliance entered the case, right? So
Mhm.
through Peter Tickton. So an interested party, which we have now become, cannot file the amicus brief, right? Because that is a friend of the court, an uninterested party, or a party that takes an interest in it, but is not party to the event. So unfortunately, I cannot provide another amicus brief to that case. Um, but the components are there. The record was made. The efforts that exist there and point to these matters. We now have cause to take this on in direct fashion as representation for Ms. Peters through Peter and the legal team at large. So that it's actually a better situation in that sense now at this point. So all of these arguments are now fleshed out on the table up front from defense counsel as opposed to being two-part to bring all the issues into light.
Okay, yeah, and that, to my, at least from my perspective, when at the time that was filed, the biggest point that I saw, which I think was important, was the fact that it essentially laid out for, the DOJ, all the problems that existed and the path that they could take.
So I do, and that's when when I spoke with people from I'll just say from the government, DOJ, whatever office, they called about the amicus brief. They wanted to know where I got the information, how I came up with that, where I solidified that effort, and how that became that moment. So we were able to provide quite a bit of information and point them in the direction of others that could provide information. So I'm excited about the fact that we gave them enough content to open this investigation. American Rights Alliance was a key to that effort. I'm not saying that anyone else wasn't. They may have, and it could have been as simple as a part of a situation where we were the needle on the not the straw, the final straw that broke the proverbial back of the camel, right? So all these fantastic efforts are going on, fantastic legal efforts. Stephanie Lambert and McSweeney, John Case, and others that we're continuing with again fantastic legal efforts. We just brought some other components, and hopefully, any one of those components. Then I think we're all of the opinion nobody cares so much as to how the battle was fought and won, as to the result of the victory, being that Tina Peters is released from prison because she is, as we all know, a Gold Star mother and a hero to this nation. And what her actions were individually were rather noble, and to take on that risk to do what she did to give us the living, breathing copy of preserved data from the 2020 election, one of the few that exists remaining in the country today. So God bless Tina Peters and her efforts and her action that led us to this place. Unfortunately, as Maoists like to do, Colorado has essentially hung her on the wall to serve as an example to others what will happen if you expose criminality or criminal conduct or illegal subversion of the United States Constitution, the will of the people, and our rights to vote.
Yeah, amen. So as it stands now, I know there was also some people, I went at a few people on X because they were putting up different fundraisers and things like that. Your organization and you are all working directly with for legal defense. There's of course her website, but I get a lot of questions as well about what is the best way to support Tina and the work that you all are doing. So in addition to prayers, if you want to just give us an idea of if there's anything, messaging to people, reaching out, putting pressure on certain individuals, whatever it might be, what's the best way that the general public can support Tina?
Look, I think all the right individuals are highly aware are acutely aware of the situation and have taken great interest and are doing their damnedest to get this done and done the right way, as we already mentioned. As it comes to fundraising, it was very, I talked to you on one of the days you were going into prison to go meet with Tina, I think last, right? I think that was, a
Yeah.
month or two ago when we were having a discussion. And Tina has made it very clear her wishes for fundraising and how she wants that handled, that she wants that. And if the fundraising site does not appear on Tina Peters' website, which I think the only two there are American Rights Alliance fundraiser for her, that was featured in the Gateway Pundit, and her individual fundraiser there that goes to commissary and some other issues that are desperately needed. No other fundraiser is an official Tina Peters fundraiser, and I can't speak to the content of it or where the money goes. And I'm assuming you're in the same position, and you're much closer to Tina than I am on a personal level, and knowing her wishes because you're the one that shared the communication with me, Tina's wishes. So I do urge people to consider when you're donating to Tina Peters to make sure that you're finding that site through the Tina Peters website and donating to those functions from that in that capacity as opposed to some other party's fundraiser, which I'm not saying, I'm not aware of anyone else that's an authorized fundraiser for Tina Peters other than American Rights Alliance and her own fundraiser that's put up through the website. Is that correct, Apollo?
Donate to the American Rights Alliance fundraiser as well as to Tina personally. And these links will be in the description for anyone watching. If you see any other fundraisers, just know these are the only authorized places per Tina Peters' wishes that you can donate to her for her legal fundraising as well as for her personally while she's in prison. So I just thank everyone for staying up to date with that. I know there's been some changes and a lot of back and forth. Uh, but Treniss, any other updates, whether it's directly about Tina and any progress that gives you some hope? Because there's a lot of things going on.
Unfortunately, there is one aspect of something that's happening for Tina that's not publicly available, and I'm not inclined to share that without Mr. Ticton's approval. We haven't publicly shared that yet, so I think at this point, it needs to remain that way. But I will tell people that donate and pray, not necessarily in that order by any stretch of the imagination. Tina Peters needs our support, needs our help. Work on that, and let's make sure that we get this Gold Star mom back home where she belongs and recognizes the American hero that she is for what she courageously did for all of us for the 2020 election that is becoming every day is becoming more questionable. I would say if you weren't in a place where you already believe the election was stolen, you certainly have new questions seeing what's coming out of Kash Patel and others in this day and age regarding other entities attempting to influence or subvert the will of the people of the United States of America during the 2020 election and potentially at other times as well. So, Apollo, you'd asked me about other things that we're talking about and other issues. And um, I think Tina Peters has been gracious and been awesome to offer the platform from her show to be available to people in the American public to become aware of other issues, that people that are facing similar scenarios as Tina, grave injustices that are imprisonable offenses, if a corrupt application of law is utilized to punish someone as wrongfully, and that would be, we recently took on case for James O'Keefe and became lead counsel there on a case for James O'Keefe on First Amendment with what we saw with this Jamie Menina and the Booz Allen contractor that was working at the Pentagon, former FBI agent, now Mark Zaid is representing the case and making some bombastic statements, one might call them, on social media, and it looks honestly not like nothing more. It looks like ambulance chasing. It certainly doesn't rise to the responsibility of an officer of the court, in my opinion. I don't like to see that kind of thing because you're actually going out and soliciting for people to want to file a lawsuit against an individual that's a journalist. That doesn't make sense. But as much as I love James and I love James O'Keefe and his cases and what he's done, since the Project Veritas days, where he's now at OMG Media, O'Keefe Media Group, he's a fantastic individual, an excellent journalist, a hard-hitting guy. He gets things done, exposes some real bad people and corruption, and some hard left ideologues that continue to subvert the will of the people. Shayna Gaviola is the case that's breaking my heart. aside from a Tina Peters. This is a single mother. And when I think about Shayna's case, this is in the Eastern District of California, California, if you will, kind of like Camirado, right? So it's another same bad set of scenarios, except this case is federal. This case is inconsistent with the Trump administration's wishes, defying the idea that parents have parental rights and religious liberties to make choosings for themselves and their children, as it's relevant to raising a child and or being a parent. So let me explain what's happened. A young mother moves her family from Tennessee, a single mother, moves her family from Tennessee to California, seeking greener horizons, pastures, if you will. When she moves this family, and later she becomes aware that there is things happening at the school where her children attend and affecting one of her children to be considered radical ideology by many of us. I think anyone that thinks that they have the right to treat a child psychologically in the school, unbeknownst to the parent and against their will and wishes, inconsistent with their rights and liberties, as well as their religious rights and liberties, i.e., the transgender ideology, it should be of grave concern. And that is something that has taken place in California, we're aware of, but we have precedent setting cases here where a parent has fought for the right to send a child to a Christian school in Missouri from the state of California. But that was somehow subverting the will of the interest of the state of California when the parent's been proven to do no wrongdoing. The parent's been not proven to be unfit. The parents, there's not even a reasonable allegation or witness to any of this event that supposedly that's just happening in the court. And I can't get into the detail of that. There's a minor involved and a minor child. But I want to say this. Shayna Gaviola needs people's support too. That's a case where I believe it's another precedent-setting case. It's in federal court in the Eastern District, and it's in front of none other than the same radical judge. I don't know how these judges get all these cases. It's amazing to me how that works in this so-called lottery system that is supposed to happen in the federal judiciary. What's happened there is the same judge that said that ICE, a law enforcement agency, has to have a warrant to make an arrest. What if the local sheriff had to have a warrant every time they made an arrest? They arrest people all the time on suspicion of, or the belief that some crime has occurred, rather an officer witnesses or becomes aware of it afterward. They don't have to have a warrant to make an arrest. If an officer sees you committing a crime or believes you've committed a crime or you're guilty of some criminal action, they just arrest you. And then they come in, bring in, they file a charge. That's how it works. DOJ determines charge, a DA. This is absurdity that this Judge Thurston ruled against ICE and is now the same judge that is going to be on the bench in front of Miss Gaviola. I just amazed to see that this is happening yet again and again. We saw this in DC, we see it in California, we see it Colorado and other places. The same radical judges keep getting the radical cases so that they can rule on them. And I'm quite disturbed as to how that happens, as are others. We're trying to figure that out, but we, of course, don't have a lens to look into the judiciary to see this so-called random selection process. So, who the hell's American Rights Alliance? I get it. Nobody knows. What is that? American Rights Alliance was funded initially by Don Jr. That initial funding at American Rights Alliance, given by Don Jr., was to assist people that are experiencing lawfare and to assist individuals, citizens of these United States, who are being bludgeoned with this unrealistic lawfare and abuse of our system, whether it be a civil case or a criminal case. At this point, we have a number of cases since I've come on at the American Rights Alliance. It's kind of the same pace we were working at with January 6th, with the hundreds and hundreds of defendants we assisted there. I think it's going to be paramount. It's going to be very important. The advocacy work, like we did at Condemned USA for the January 6th defendants, ultimately netted a pardon, right? Many people are aware of the work we did and the communications we were having directly and indirectly with the administration to advocate for this, that there were Sixth Amendment violations, abuses of rights, et cetera, and on down the list. So where we are now, I have a young mother facing trial in August, and she's going to end up in the same place as Tina Peters in some crazy prison, although it be federal. And what we're calling on is for the Trump administration. The American Rights Alliance respectfully calls on the Trump administration to remove this federal prosecutor, this AUSA, Assistant United States Attorney in the Eastern District, for the impropriety that took place outside of the courtroom. And I believe this case should be dismissed. This should not be an ongoing case. There should be no trial for Miss Gaviola, but I rather contend, and I'm sure it's very obvious, that that's likely to happen because we have Judge Thurston, the radical bench operator, as we mentioned already, and we have this Michael Tierney, this AUSA that intends to be a judge. That could never happen. Mr. Tierney absolutely cannot be Judge Tierney because Judge Tierney has already proven himself to operate outside the boundaries, push the limits, at whatever you might say, and has created a rather disgusting abuse of the law himself and an impropriety that took place that he should have recused himself from this case, removed himself from the case already. Yet that hasn't happened. And I believe that the current counsel, very well, may should recuse themselves as well. I don't believe that when I say a generality here, when defense counsel is disingenuous with defense, right? The criminal accused, right? Criminally accused, that person should step away from the case immediately. And there's great cause then for that person to file a motion to withdraw. Miss Gaviola gets to come, find new counsel and be represented vigorously, have a vigorous legal defense. And I think that's exactly what she needs. And these people that took part in this before, I believe the exposure on them is going to be of interest to the American public. Sunlight's the best medicine, Apollo, and we have an opportunity to really peel back the clouds and let it shine down. But we need to raise some money for Shayna Gaviola's case. So if you believe in parental rights, if you believe in religious liberties, if you believe that you should be able to discipline your child, or that no one should be able to counsel them and provide them surgeries and puberty blockers and all kinds of things that are so inconsistent with anything in our law. And if I think about this, I'm mind boggled at the idea that an individual, think about this, a child won't be allowed to get a tattoo. You can't buy beer. You can't buy nicotine products. You can't do so many things, right? Because you're not old enough to make that decision. Man, it could be permanent, right? And that's why they say, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to allow you to alter your body or do something to your body that could be permanent, like a tattoo or even an earring or a nose ring or any of these things without parental consent until you're 18. Yet in this case, when the state wants to do something, when there's a radical ideology afoot, and they're able to lean into that radical ideology, what they do is they strip the parent of their rights. Imagine your child coming home from school one day telling you that they're receiving, some level of psychological care, gender affirming care, or whatever kind of care they want to say in California, and that your child is on the path to be medicated or counseled, indoctrinated, we should say, medicated, I say poisoned, right? And then ultimately, potentially physically changed forever, or the surgical uh, scenario. None of that should happen. No parent should be subjected to that. And I don't know when the state got the idea that we should do these things at the ripe old age of 13 and 14. Once you turn 18, go do what you want. That's between you and God. I don't support your effort, but I support your rights to do it. What you don't have, the state of California should not have taken Miss Gaviola's rights. They should not have impeded her progress or her ability to care for her child. The parent knows best. And in this case, it was an egregious abuse of our law. Here we are now with this woman facing prison a few short weeks from now. If we don't get the right money raised, get the right attorneys in this, and get her taken care of, it's going to be a precedent setting case that has a damage and it will do damage not only in California because it's a federal case, it's DOJ, and it's going in front of a federal criminal court. If this kind of precedent is set, children will not be safe all over the country, and it will give cause or aid and comfort to the idea of radical transgender nonsense that could undermine the very rights of a parent and ultimately harm a child.
Yeah, and while you've been talking about this, I've been looking up some of the news on this. Is an odd case in its reporting as well, dealing with the emancipation requests and then the kidnapping charges. The entire thing is very, very odd. And this is a really
Yeah.
disturbing trend that we've seen in California, but all over the nation, with with parents' rights just being stripped in the most ridiculous circumstances. And I don't really see it getting better unless some really good victories are seen at the court level. So do you know, is there a way that they can support Shayna?
Yes, so Shayna Gaviola has her own Give Sin Go page. It's up and running. And that supports her case at American Rights Alliance. So if you're valuing rights and religious liberties, I think this is a very important case. People need to get behind it and serve that interest. Miss Gaviola is she would be here herself to ask for help, but it's probably not a good idea to put her out in the media right now as we're headed into trial. There's been all kinds of nonsense go on in her case since we got involved, and now she's going to be seeking, or she'll be securing us for counsel in the very near future, I believe. And I look forward to seeing that case through and seeing Miss Gaviola vindicated, seeing parental rights remain as they should be as part of a structure that starts with the parent and the right to parent your child, make decisions for your minor child without the state-run incorporation of a Marxist ideology that's been infiltrating America as communists have done for a very long time.
I have the Gibson go up on screen for everybody who's watching. So if you can support, please keep this lovely woman and her beautiful family in your prayers and support them if you can. All right, well, Treniss, I appreciate you coming on. That's a really great update. I appreciate that. That is definitely a topic that's close to home for Tina as well as myself. Um, so if you have any final words, fire away. And if they can follow you, any of the work that you're doing, please let us know.
Yeah, so my handles on my social media are still at Condemned USA. I've created them there. I'm certainly not going to change them at this point with the amount of followers we have. We certainly appreciate people following us in the messaging. I do keep up with quite a bit, and you'll see that I was in DC for the military parade, and I had meetings with the DOJ and FBI and other people within the administration, and was able to sit with Sebastian Gorka and talk for a while. And Stephen Miller, we sat together at the parade for a while, and he has this wonderful young family, and it's just so cool to watch little kids playing with the stuffed animals still. It reminds you of why we all do this. It's not just for us, it's not just for the Tina Peters, it's not just for the Shayna Gaviolas, but it's for the future of the country. Generations yet to come rely on our actions today. And that includes the donations. I hate to, beat the dead horse and ask, but I don't know what else to do. We have to have money to fund this. The left, as you saw, we saw what kind of money they were getting from USAID, and Stay for Your Age. And Stacey Abrams has issued $2 billion, and all these leftist cohorts are issued all kinds of money. They're fighting you with your own tax dollars. And I'm sorry, but you're going to have to reach in and give a little bit more, because the reality is it doesn't matter if it was wrong. It doesn't matter if it's an injustice. It still happened, and they're still funded, and we're not at the level that we need to be funded to take these cases on and represent them. I'd rather sit here and talk to you all day, Apollo, about the cases and our actions and what we're doing, never have to worry about a dime. But unfortunately, and then people go, "Oh gosh, the attorneys are so expensive." They don't have any idea what goes into these cases. I'm sorry, I don't mean to undermine the public, right? This public that listens to Tina Peters' show does have a better interest and better understanding of what it takes to fight these cases. But I will say this, as a key aspect of what's happening right now in our nation, we have to fight back. We owe it to the children right now. We owe it to the future generations. If they're not important enough to fight for, who's going to fight for them? So the fight is that, and I want to remind people, they go, "Well, the money is a lot, and the attorneys just want." Have you called a plumber to your home in the last few years? I call a plumber, and a plumber wants 130, 150 bucks an hour. My auto mechanic wants, shop rates of over 100 bucks an hour. Why do people think that attorneys should work for free? They would love to. These people are emotionally invested. They're, instead of charging the usual rates of, this kind of case with Gaviola is probably around $100,000 loss, a criminal defense. But it's a serious thing, child trafficking, your own child, supposedly, across state lines, is a big deal. And the problem is the money, and speak to this, is that the people that are fighting this are only asking for a fraction of their normal fees to do this, and saying, "Hey, we'll take it on the chin. I'll just pay my staff, and I'll take just a little bit because I got to eat. I got to, pay a mortgage. I have to pay for my kids in school, et cetera, et cetera." They're human beings. Lawyers are not all, driving new Rolls Royces and living in penthouses, right? Particularly the guys we worked with, that's not the case. They're all working their butts off for this nation. And but we have to, just like if you send an army off to war, Apollo, you have to make sure they're clothed, fed, and have ammunition, right, to fight, and fuel for the machinery, et cetera, et cetera. In this case, we have to have cash to keep pushing these agendas to get out, raise money. I would, again, would just much rather come on and talk about the issues and go on, but we're not the ACLU. We're not funded like they are, the American Civil Leftist Union and these other organizations that undermine the nation, claim to be one thing, and they're part of ideology. We the people can do this. We can do it together. You can help American Rights Alliance. You can find us at americanrightsalliance.org. I encourage people to become a monthly subscriber. If you can do $25 a month, you can do $25 a month. We're certainly welcoming some bigger donors. We're setting up speaking engagements around the country. Some of them are as small as 20 people and are being done in people's homes with key donors and we're speaking at a lot of events upcoming. I think if people notice, there's a July 4th event where Steve Bannon, Joe Hoft, Gateway Pundit, many others, and that's going to have a lot of communication about Tina Peters. A lot of the people there are involved in Tina's case, 107 and others. And then in addition to that, there's another event coming right around the corner in Vegas the month later. Another event there with the Hofts, Gateway Pundit, Bannon. I'm really looking forward to getting people out, getting to these events, come and hear this in detail, learn what's happening in your country, because the educated citizen willing to fight back, not only with their checkbook, with their voice, and the strength of their abilities, right? Legal abilities is going to be very important to this nation over the next 4 years. It's not Donald Trump's fight to do alone. He is leading this country out of this nonsense, but we have a lot of work to do to get rid of some corrupt prosecutions, hold some states accountable, and hold some very bad people accountable for what they've done to our citizens.
Yeah, amen. And well, Treniss, I just want to thank you again for all the work that you're doing. Everyone, please check out, I have it up on screen for you, AmericanRightsAlliance.org. And right now showing you the donate page. Please support them. They're helping a lot of people. And as you've seen from any venture that, has sustained itself or had problems, we're fighting against a Goliath with a lot more money and a lot more resources, and they've been organized a lot longer. So we really need people with the will to keep going and with the hearts to be able to support those who are doing the things that we're not able to do, or to pick up in the areas that we're not able to fill, to keep doing that. So Treniss, thank you to you and the rest of the team. And for everybody watching, please support them if you can. Treniss, I'll give you a final word. And I appreciate you coming on.
Paulo, in a final word, I just want to remind people that, prayers are very important pieces of action, probably paramount. But God doesn't want you to lean on the shovel and pray for a hole. You've got to become active. It requires elbow grease. It requires digging in. And if that elbow grease is just writing a check, that's great. If you can investigate, you can investigate. If you can lend yourself from legal professional, we need help and we're happy to take it. So there's a place to volunteer at American Rights Alliance as well. And we're happy to have volunteers. Some people are just pushing messaging. Other people are investigating or doing research for us, going through documents on discovery, any number of things. There's a lot of things that can be done. So the American people, we're going to look, we got ourselves into this, and the American people are going to get ourselves out of this.
Amen. Treniss, thank you very much. And we'll be in touch definitely. Guys, everybody, please support, follow Treniss, follow and support American Rights Alliance. And of course, you all have in the description the ways to support Tina. So God bless Treniss. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and welcome back, everyone. And we've got a few more guests joining us right now. Welcome back to Matt Meck. You have all seen him here, as well as Joe Hoft. Gentlemen, I want to thank you both very much for being here again with us. And
Hey, Paul.
yeah, thank you for joining us again and keeping Tina's show going. Matt, I'll let each one of you kind of give an update on what's going on. It's great to see you again, Joe.
Yeah, you too.
So, gentlemen, I'll give you a few minutes to kind of give us an intro, and then we can get into whatever you all need to. I'm going to try to talk a little less because I'm losing my voice a bit today. But I'll be right here. So, Matt, if you want to take it away first.
Sure, Apollo. First off, honored to do anything to support Tina Peters. Not only did I certainly get to know her professionally, but personally, dear friend. And not a day goes by that the coalition that we started, gosh, it's been around now since 2021, hasn't thought of Tina, worked for Tina, advocated for Tina. And I know there's a lot of things that we're doing we're doing in election integrity writ large, so we can keep the sacrifice that Tina did for all of us alive and worthwhile. We have an event out here in Vegas on the 5th of July on election integrity. Joe Hoft is going to moderate that. He's here on the show today. And our mindset is going to be
just
Tina.
while you're bringing that up, that event.
Yeah, what I'll let if you go to unauthorized.one, unauthorized.1/events, you'll see it there, and you can pull up the event. And anyway, that's going on to keep what Tina has sacrificed for front and center. And I can't go into great detail, but I do. There are great people that, if I said the names, you would know, who are interfacing with some folks in DOJ, interfacing with the staff there at ODNI on what happened in 2020. And I think you're going to see some things moving out forward. All I think that is in the honor of Tina and working to advance what Tina sacrificed so much for. So there's a lot of good things happening in the election integrity domain. And I'll just use the words of Patrick Byrne. And I tell you, a lot of what we did would not have been possible without Patrick Byrne and the America Project and the support they gave us. But as he said, and the folks I know who briefed some of the folks in ODNI, that Tina is going to be a hero. She is a hero, but history will look back on her as a hero. And what she was able to do helped provide a Rosetta Stone for them to look at other things. So again, Apollo, we are doing a lot of things in election integrity, all currently, certainly for the memory of and service to Tina. And we all are praying for her to be out of that damn prison as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. Joe, any thoughts on that I missed?
No, great job, Matt. And, yeah, Paula, great to see you again. Great to see you. The this situation with Tina, I'm thinking about all the stuff that's transpired over the last few weeks. The thing, it really, for me, I go back to this call that I had with Tina one day on my show there at Untamed, and she was saying, "Hey, Joe, this is my most important message that I think I've ever had." And she said, "We believe that there's this supremacy clause that was broken in her case." And what she was referring to is this federal statute that's in our Constitution that says, hey, it's called the supremacy clause, and it states that the federal government supersedes or state statutory I guess that'd be the way to say it. I'm not an attorney, but trumps the states. So they put that in place in the Constitution from the beginning because they wanted to strengthen the federal government. And so just because a state might have some sort of situation in their law, if it went against federal law, the federal law superseded that. It was called the supremacy clause. And what Tina was saying is, hey, I was doing everything that I was mandated to do per the federal elections. I was saving the information. I was protecting the information from the elections. There's about a 2-year time frame that you have to keep this information, both state and federal. And she argued that, hey, she was doing her job. And then they come in and they prosecute her for these state crimes that were pretty much, made up. None of them really had to do with the elections. They ended up indicting her and targeting her on some other charges. And she said, I was doing my job. And she certainly was. We talked to a big time attorney back then, and he agreed. yeah, the supremacy clause has some legs. More recently, I started looking more at what was going on, what happened in the election, and specifically in Colorado. And it just occurred to me that, hey, there were activities related to Tina's case that were related to the federal government, even. So the FBI, for example, raided a couple people's homes. Tina's was one of them. Sharona Bishop's was another. That's a federal institution, as you guys know. There was other situations related to the federal government. There was a conference call in Mesa County where Tina worked, where Merrick Garland and Christopher Wray participated in that call. This is before Tina was ever indicted. So there were these situations that involved the federal government, and yet she gets indicted under state crimes. So I raised that with a very, very senior level Trump administration attorney, and said, what do you think about this? He says, well, the state, she was indicted under state, so she can't be pardoned, but under state law for her state crimes. And I said, well, what about this? I identified 3 or 4 different situations where federal activities were taking place in her case. And this attorney said, well, you're right. This has never been done before, but there is some discussion that was going on at that time. This has been about probably a couple of weeks ago within the Trump administration, suggesting that he could pardon her on a federal pardon, based on the argument that there were federal activities involved in her case. And so that has, that was a couple of weeks ago. I was pretty excited about that. And then, like Matt is saying, there's now some activities behind the scenes to get some more investigation into what actually happened with Tina, going back to the 2020 election, what she did, and what the Colorado State did as well. I think what also needs to be included in that is what the federal government did, what Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland were doing on that conference call, for example, in Mesa County. Why did the FBI raid their homes? What was taken? Why was that not even considered in her crimes by the state? So lots of questions there, lots of commingling. I think there's still a situation that Trump could try to pardon her. It'd be the first time in U.S. history, but there might be an argument there as well. So that's one of the things, Matt, that's been going on too. I mean, anybody's trying to figure out any way that we could get Tina out of prison. It's outrageous that she's there,
Well, and I do support, I know it's very frustrating for a lot of people. And I myself, and I'm sure everyone here is distraught, to say the least, that Tina's still in jail the way and being treated the way that she is. But, I also am aware of the fact that if they do something haphazardly, that all of these state governments and these corrupt officials in the courts and, the secretaries of state, not just in Colorado, they'll likely turn it into a war than using Tina as a chess piece over, the Trump overreach issue, which they've been kind of politicizing. So I do want them to do it right. It was an interesting deal, though, when they came and demanded all of those records from 2020, going back to 2020, but as well as in the last election, everything that they had, and were asked to preserve it. And then there wasn't really anything put out there about that until weeks later. And, it kind of went unacknowledged. I mean, it was surprising to me, at least, that I didn't know about it earlier, until, just a couple weeks ago. And then all of a sudden they come out with this media campaign that this is Trump, weaponizing things basically on Tina Peters' behalf. So I'm hopeful, because that is a big step, since they've formally acknowledged that they've put in such a large request for election information. So I don't know, Matt, if you have any thoughts on that, but I do believe that things are happening. It's just people need to stay patient, I think, and keep working in the ways where they can be active and effective where they are. Because there's a point of this where, we have a great legal team and everyone working for Tina and on all these cases, but some of these things just take time.
They do, Apollo, and I'm reminded of a saying that we don't want Tina to necessarily become a flea amongst pachyderms, right? And you get squashed with competing agendas, and then sadly in DC that happens to people, right? And Apollo, I'm thinking like Peter McNeely, who's the new, I guess, appointed as the U.S. attorney there by Pam Bondi, sworn in there. Now that there's somebody there representing, appointed by the Trump administration. Again, I don't think this person is going to be the one that's going to be confirmed through the Senate and so forth, but at least appointed, kind of like Ed Martin was, like Sigal Chattah in Nevada, and the Alina Habba in New Jersey, and also now Judge Janine in the District of Columbia. Hopefully that brings some stability to certain things. And you're right. I think that you focused on the right thing there, Apollo, is I think the folks are trying to do it the right way. So it's not ready, shoot, aim, but it's let's do this. So one, we don't hurt Tina any further, do no harm, and do no further harm. And number two, I think, is not establish bad precedents where you get someone else as a president who is antithetical to things that we believe in, the Constitution, the rule of law, populism, and the will of the people, and tries to do something with a crony or somebody like a Sandy Berger or something like that, if that were ever come out. So I do think people are trying to do this the right way. Now that someone's in there in Colorado, I think that's good. And number three, as the third point I remind folks is, remember, DOJ lost a lot of people. I mean, a lot of folks just quit. A lot of folks got fired. So literally, I was talking with someone this morning in DOJ. They've got 30 pounds of stuff they're trying to fit into a 5-pound bag, and they are working hard. We're not might not be as happy as we want to be, but I can tell you from folks I've talked with in there, they haven't forgot about her at all.
Mm.
Well, and I can only imagine how challenging it is with people on short term too. And sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Joe, but I think, especially we have to remember there's not a full team working, at least not to my understanding. I'm certainly not in the inner circle, but I think we've seen a lot of slow walking, to use a term that people aren't fond of at this point in time, because of the idea of a precedent. And I think in Tina's case, what it would end up meaning is she then is kind of she becomes the rope that they're tugging on in a battle of political overstepping. And there's a lot touching this, because if they rush it, it's not going to do Tina any favors if she just gets caught up in a legal issue again, and they're fighting over whether she should be released or whose jurisdiction it is. And it's not going to do any justice to the sacrifices that she's made, because then you again throw the focus away from the actual rigging of the elections and the information that we do have, and then it turns into another another issue. So for her sake, though it's frustrating, I do want things to be laid out well so that they have a clean shot. So sorry, Joe, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, I appreciate you saying that. I'm sitting back. Guys, the thing that grabs me and a lot of people is that we sat through 2018, 2019 with Bill Barr running the DOJ. Barr's going to get the tab and all that. And, and it never happened. And Durham was maybe just a vehicle to stall longer, so that then they said, well, statute of limitations is over. I guess we wipe our hands. We indict one guy for a bogus little crime. He walks away, keeps his law license, and that's that. And that was a I believe it was a treasonous act, the Mueller exam. I believe that needs to be absolutely investigated. I believe Seth Rich's murder needs to be investigated. I believe that was the roots of the Russia collusion sham. As we go back and look at Comey lying in front of Congress and Adam Schiff and the impeachment and all this stuff, it's never been resolved. And and I saw a piece, and now we just keep adding to it. We got Tina Peters now. We've got January, the January 6th. We've got all these various situations that keep piling up, and we're not getting any resolution. And here's the thing that really frustrated me this morning, and I'm starting to get frustrated because I'm looking at my calendar here on my laptop, and it says June 26th. That's today. So we're coming up on more than 5 months in office, and now we're coming up on our first half year. So almost 1/8 of the Trump administration is almost up. We're seeing magical things from Trump overseas. I just read something, Matt, that Trump hasn't just engaged Iran and Israel in peace talks, but he's also working on the Gaza Strip, and he's got a deal going there too. This guy's magnificent, the stuff he's doing, and it's so fast and it's so smart. And the people over there are amazed with him. They treated him like royalty. And I just even heard reading the conservative treehouse right before this that there's signs of Trump in Syria thanking him. Basically, he is going to help Syria rebuild itself as well, and without a Iranian connection. So he's so smart in all this stuff. But we've got this DOJ with Pam Bondi where she's going out on TV saying we got it. And here's the other piece I'll just mention, that which is giving me concern. So maybe we can talk through some of this. Maybe you can give me some assurances. But today, Dan Bongino came out with a tweet, and he mentions all these great things they're doing. And there was not a damn word in there about elections. There wasn't a word about Russia collusion. I don't want to hear from these guys that the statute of limitations is up, because to me, that's a lie. That's a scapegoat, and that's garbage. For treason, you have no statutory limitations. Same with murder. So Seth Rich as well. So we need to look into this stuff. This is the stuff. If we don't get this fixed, if we don't get our elections fixed, all of this work for Tina is for naught. I don't think she's going to be happy if she gets out of prison. I know she's going to be happy when she gets out. But if we haven't fixed and addressed these sins since the Obama years, in my mind, just terrible actions that have taken place by this corrupt DOJ and FBI. So I think we got to keep pressuring these guys to do more.
Joe, I agree. And Apollo, I know from several different sources, Trump in the White House tells people, get her out. He calls her a political prisoner. And to your point, Joe, and I was just talking to Frank Gaffney earlier. Heck, Trump's just turned 79. He's the energy he's got is amazing. I hope to God I have that at 79 years of age. But it's like he's been expected to do everything, right? And I understand DOJ is undermanned. I get that, and they need this bill to be passed, so there's funding and so forth. Heck, they don't even have travel dollars in a lot of cases. But I'm going to say this in the nicest way possible. People got to do their damn job, right? When the president gives you the commander's intent, from my military background, when you hear from the commander, here's my intent. Good commanders don't tell you how to go do something. They tell you what they want done, and you're supposed to be picked and put in a position for a reason, because you got an expertise in your domain. Well, then go do your damn job, as Belichick would do. Just do your damn job. And I think, Apollo, you were kind of talking about that, and I think that's the sense in a lot of the base is Tina, some of the J6er stuff, the Russia collusion hoax, the elections. Folks want to see concrete actions and not just perfunctory things. They want to see things that actually are making a difference. And I think until they see that, they're not going to be completely happy. They're like what they're seeing on the larger scale, but these specific things, you're right. I think Bannon said this on his show. If Tina were to get out and we don't have these elections fixed, I think she's going to say, well, what the hell did I sacrifice for?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, no, I agree with you on the. It's funny when I see actually what you just said. Really struck a chord with me because we saw under the Biden administration nothing but he can't do it because all these people are fighting him, and so everything gets excused, and we see that from a lot of these officials too. So I'm certainly not like full steam ahead. I'm in love with all of these appointments. I question timelines on some of the releases of information, but again, having an understanding of some implications that would go along with some of the information that everyone's been yelling for. You do have to accept a little bit of a little bit of time and grace, but again, not everything is Trump, and it saddens me when I see. Well, I wish Trump were more of a dictator. I'm like, okay, well, do you? I mean, did you live through the last 5 years? I mean, how much of that do you really want him to just go and use sweeping actions for? That's a big
To your
part of
point,
the problem
Apollo, when he's
where it
challenged,
come from.
they bring it to courts, and it works through the process: district court, circuit court, appeals court, Supreme Court. And he's not being a dictator; it's being adjudicated in the courts. And now, if anybody's been a dictator, you have judges now following a Supreme Court ruling say they're not going to comply with the Supreme Court. So now, who's being a dictator? Is it the judiciary or is it Trump?
Yeah.
Well, and it's the exact same thing that they tried with the No Kings thing. We just went from California, and you had the exact same optics that they tried to run based on those riots, and then deploying National Guard and things like that. And Newsom, some of these whack jobs tried to force him to basically take an action that would make him look like a dictator. And by the grace of God and his intelligence, that didn't happen, and that was diffused. I know there were a lot of good people who were working on information and bringing information about who was doing what to the proper channels in law enforcement. So thank God for that. But again, if you want something done and you want a nation that's going to have a track record moving forward, that's going to be something other than what we've seen, then I think they're doing it the right way, even if that takes more time. I'm willing to wait that extra time, assuming we have proper accountability for things to be done right.
Yeah. Matt, I was got a question for you. You mentioned earlier they're cleaning house in the DOJ. There's been a lot of firings. I haven't heard about them. Really, I haven't heard about much. What are you hearing?
No, they did. They let a lot of folks were told to leave. A lot of folks just left because they didn't like the new administration. So literally, they are immensely understaffed, and they don't have a budget right now. That they need, and you have folks, and I'm not trying to exaggerate. I'm just trying to calculate or relay exactly conversations they've had. You have folks like doing 10 different jobs that are equally important jobs, and maybe they get new hires in, but they get young people in. And these young people don't have the experience, right? Which is you have great initiative, but you don't have that. I mean, what you did, Joe, in your line of work before the world went crazy, where you're a international company forensic auditor, and you just don't come in a new hire and know how to do that. It takes a while to get trained. So I put out a thing today on Truth Social. To the Gateway Pundit article about one of the people in DOJ that we can't do election stuff because we don't have a data guy or something. And I put Trump on there. I had Pam Bondi, I had Cash, and I had Ed Martin. And I said, dear Mr. President, there is an army of volunteers. I know volunteers don't have the authority to do things, but I said there's an army of volunteers in the election science domain who have devoted their lives to this, certainly since November 2020, some for decades, who you don't got to pay us. You don't have to. We'll help you. Not that we make the decisions, but we'll guide you. You to say you don't have a data guy, to me, that just pissed me off to no end. It's like, are you shitting me?
Yeah. But that lady was a scammer. She's a snake. You could see she was building a narrative that, hey, we can't do this. We don't have the right personnel or whatever. That's all a lie. This lady was a snake. I'm reminded when you're talking, I did a piece not long ago.
By the way, her boss is Michael, not Michael Yates, the OLA, but Michael Gates. If anybody knows that is her boss, Michael Gates.
Wow. I don't know who that is, but I do know that James Comey's daughter's been running that case in New York City against P. Diddy. She's running it. And we do know that James Comey's son-in-law is in Virginia with the DOJ, and he's going to be put on that Abbygate case that's coming up, where they are going to decide and discuss what happened in Afghanistan on that fateful day when 14 soldiers died. Now, the real story there is that there was an order, or the order to to stop that truck was not given, or if it was. And that was the big story behind it. I don't know the whole story. I'm not. I know inside out.
I know it inside out.
James Comey's son-in-law is going to be on that case. What are these two people still doing in the DOJ? They cannot be trusted. You cannot have them doing anything because their conflict of interest is so great. It's at the maximum amount. You cannot have these people whose father is James Comey working in our Department of Justice. When I was in corporate and I was an auditor or in finance, I couldn't do audits of something where I had a conflict of interest. We adhered to that. We looked at that on every engagement. It was professional. This is how we looked at these, snakes in the DOJ, like with the Mueller exam. None of them should have been on that investigation. It's like they've taken conflict of interest and ignored it and thrown it out the window. And I don't know where Pam Bondi is on this stuff. I have no idea what she's doing. She's going to the Fox News and doing these presentations, and God bless her, but she better start getting stuff done, because we're not going to put up with another Bill Barr. We cannot. We need somebody in that role. And I'm telling you, Cash and Dan Bongino, they'd better start talking about Mueller, the election and stuff, or we're done. And Matt, I'll say one more thing here. Yesterday, there was big news coming out of Orange County, California, and I was so excited.
Yeah.
We talked about it last night on your show, and it was so exciting. I've been writing about Orange County. The elections there are garbage. Everything's broke pretty much across the country, but in Orange County, the sixth largest county, everything was broke. And we find out that, the DOJ is going to sue Orange County related to voter rolls. Well, I looked into that a little more today, Matt, and I still haven't even read the entire case. But what I'm seeing is that this isn't like they're going in and saying we're going to start digging into the elections. No, they're saying that the registrar of voters there, who I've had numerous back and forths with over the past few months, because I'm calling them out on all this corruption. For example, they had 2.1 million ballots go out, yet there's only 1.8 million people on their voter rolls. So how does that happen? And his name's Bob Page. And I'm like, how's this happen, Bob? Or how come there's 300,000 more ballots that were counted than were received? It didn't make sense. And he always has an answer. Well, now they're suing this guy, Bob Page, but they're suing him because he won't let them know what names were taken off the voter roll related to illegal aliens. So it's a fixation not on the elections, it's a fixation on illegal aliens. And so that, to me, after looking at that today, I'm much more disappointed than I was yesterday. It's like, yes, we need to get to the bottom of that, but come on, guys. These elections are so broke. California, in my opinion, and in many states now, Matt, they don't have an election. It's a joke. It's too many, there's no chain of custody. The systems are broke. Everything's broke. Everything's broke. Everything I looked at when I looked in 2020, every single chapter I said, and because of this at the end, it never should have been certified from a professional, auditing perspective. And it's just as bad, if not worse. And where is the effort from our DOJ to start looking at this stuff?
I agree. I think it needs to be more directed. I know there are some things going to be delivered to Trump here in about a week, and then to Ed Martin and others, I believe, that will take some action. One thing I'd say to bring this back to Tina, if we could, is remember Reagan and the kitchen cabinet, right? And Andrew Jackson actually started that. Reagan perfected it. And we've found when folks have been able to engage with President Trump, whether it was in office the first time, the intervening years, when you can talk directly to him, not necessarily modulated by the staff around him, he gets it. His instincts are amazingly spot on. And I would urge people taking, I'm learn a lot listening and talking to Mark Cook. I know he's a friend of Apollo's, and Joe, you know him well. He'll be at our event on the 5th of July. When he took the time, certainly going around Colorado, going to Mesa County and other places, and not talk at people, but talk with people about Tina and just give them the facts, the light went off in their head that Tina was the fall person. Tina didn't do anything wrong. She was the fall person, but that 5G narrative warfare that was perpetrated upon Tina and folks who had questions with the election. I mean, heck, it wasn't considered election denying up until 2019 when you questioned or challenged an election. That's what you do in a healthy republic. We're not a democracy; we're a constitutional republic. And I would respectfully request, get on Truth Social, the audience for Tina's show here, and just ask the president. It can kind of be his extended kitchen cabinet, like a kitchen cabinet writ large, a digital kitchen cabinet. And in the case of Tina, maybe from a specific thing, ask him, where are you with Tina Peters? Your guidance was this. Your Truth Social on this date was this. Where are we with that? Because he reads those things. And then I would ask him also, sir, what is the plan? And honoring what Tina did, what is the plans to realize what you have been telling us through the campaign trail and now? One day, in person, paper ballots, hand counted were cast, precinct level, people, paper, and pens. I would, again, respectfully, get on Truth Social in numbers and ask him those questions. I would first ask about Tina, because that's a human life that needs to be at a minimum released on bond in my mind. But ask Trump those questions, because he does read those things respectfully, politely, but let him know what you think. And I think will help move the needle.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, I support doing that, and everyone just remember too, because I know I'm sometimes kind of I've had some comments privately that I give too much grace to the administration, and maybe that's true. The one point though that really, really needs to happen is she needs to be let out on bond. Let's foregoing even a pardon. Let's forget even Tina has a full pardon and she's good and everything's wonderful. I mean, that's just not how this works. But let's say we don't even get to that point. The biggest issue that we have right now, which is the reason behind there being that amicus brief that was filed by ARA, and now changes to some of the strategy on the attorney side for Tina, the habeas corpus, is that there's zero reason on the planet Earth that Tina Peters should not be out on bond, because she still has her appeal. Even if she is let out, if Tina Peters is freed from prison because of this wildly and obscene political attack on her, she still has quite a long ways to go in terms of her appeal, short of some massive play that I can't really foresee being happening in the next few months. So even if Tina gets out, Tina still has an extremely expensive and a lengthy court battle regarding her state appeal that's going to go on for a year at least. But the merciful thing that we really need to keep pushing is, how is it that the people can continue to raise awareness and keep her name alive, because she needs to be out of jail. This is like another J6 moment, because there's no reason that she should be locked up. We've now been 4 years, and President Trump pardoned a lot of the J6 defendants, almost all of them. But this is another situation like that, and she's at her age, this is a serious deal.
So Paulo, it's interesting. I won't mention all the names, but Mike Davis was on War Room, and there were two other attorneys. If I mentioned the names, you would know who they were. And Bannon had just got out of the Who's Gal himself. And these three attorneys, one Mike Davis, two other prominent names you would know, said about what you just talked about, Apollo. They said, Colorado in this case is bizarro world. The people who should be in jail are not, and Tina Peters should not be in jail, and it's upside down.
That sounds right, guys.
Yeah, and it continues to happen.
I was going to say, I wrote a piece. This lady sent it to me. Somebody from Denver area. She was communicating with Tina, and it was Tina said, "Hey, I'm not. If something happens to me, I'm not suicidal." And I put it up, and it was kind of a pretty shocking message. And I got a letter a couple weeks later. Maybe you guys know this story, and an email, and this from a woman. She goes, "Hey, I saw that." I read that, and it was a really moving, piece. And she said, "Can you make sure President Trump sees that? I'm Tina Peters' mom." And I was, concerned seeing that. She's in her 90s. And if Tina doesn't get out soon, she'll never see her mom alive again. And this is kind of the sin that these monsters, just monsters that have put her in, that have done so many cruel acts across this country, they don't care. They just don't care. And we gotta address this stuff. And I think a big piece too is, which we haven't even mentioned today too, is the judge in this case was toxic. In Tina's case, just toxic, so disgusting, and not a good person, not at all, not even close. And we need judges that are free and fair. And if we don't have them, they need to be gone, and some need to be thrown in jail if they're doing, this guy, what he did to Tina was absolutely, I think it was criminal. I think hopefully that's part of the investigation into Tina's case.
Joe, I'll echo that. And as we wind down here, I guess, is that judges are supposed to be disinterested, not uninterested, but disinterested, meaning you're like, right, you're just following, everybody's complying with the rules of the game. So they're supposed to be disinterested and dispassionate, meaning you are this judge. The fact you're not supposed to make those kind of comments that judge made in my mind. So you're right. God, and again, some of these lawyers that you would know were just sickened to their stomach by how this judge presided over that courtroom, what he did to Tina.
Yeah,
I mean, one of her attorneys, in his 50 plus years of being a lawyer and litigating, he had indicated, "I've never seen such a travesty in my life in all my years of practice." And this person, of course, was in the federal government before, so he's seen some pretty nasty stuff.
That's terrible. We got to get this stuff fixed.
Well, and I want to put this up just for a minute because you mentioned that, and this is something actually I've been I've needed more time to work on for a while now, and that's kind of my mission. So this was a post that I put up a while ago, and some people who were, in the aftermath of Tina's trial and her sentencing, which was ridiculous. There are a few judicial canon that are like the law for judicial employees in the state of Colorado, for officials. And this judge violated all of them. So just real quickly, if you read through these, and I have links up on here, this is on my X, and you can find this if you just search for these in the state of Colorado. But they uphold and promote independence, integrity, impartiality, avoid impropriety and the appearance of impropriety, shall perform duties of the office impartially, competently, and diligently, conduct the judge's personal and extrajudicial activities to minimize risk of conflict with obligations. And the more you read into all of these points as to the judicial canon, which is just the code of conduct, basically, period, end, stop, for judicial officials in the state of Colorado. And they have these in every state, and then there are those for federal judges as well. His sentencing and his behavior in her trial was absolutely atrocious. And it's clear violations of every one of these. What I'm working on is going through each day of her trial and finding specific points, like the time during the trial that he violated one of these points of the canon. Because in addition to the things going on with Tina's appeal, and obviously, just praying and anything we can do to make sure that she's let out on appeal as she should be, and hopefully down the road there might be some greater vindication for her, is filing some complaints against this judge, because he should be removed. There's no reason that man should be sitting on the
That's
bar is
right. He was
ridiculous.
toxic.
So if anyone has background in that, just know that I'll be working on that if you want to reach out to me. But anyone has the ability to do this, and I think that's something we should be doing in earnest, because that man should not be sitting on a bench.
Great point.
I agree, Apollo, and I know. And Joe, I'll talk with Steve Bannon before he does our keynote speech, remoting in on the 5th. But I remember, gosh, 2 months ago now, 3 months ago now, he called me. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning, and he was just, he can get livid. And he goes, "You tell people you're speaking with my authority from my name, and find out what the hell's going on, and let's get some damn motion going in here." And he was pissed, right? Because he wants her out, Bannon, and he was frustrated. And what I think we're suffering from, for those in the audience who know science and maybe physics a little better, it's there's a term called Brownian motion, and a lot of things. I think, Joe, you talked about it with the Tina, the election, the Russian collusion investigations, the deep state. We feel Brownian motion, which means you have a lot of movement, but there's no vector. You're not going in a direction with some speed. You're just bouncing around like atoms in a balloon. And I think, to your point, Joe, and I'll close going back to you here from my perspective here, that's what folks are frustrated with. They see a lot of Brownian motion. They see a lot of activity, but where's the vector?
Yeah, right. And I love what Apollo mentioned too about these judges. That judge was toxic. That guy shouldn't be adjudicating anything. He was a monster. He was a monster, clearly biased, clearly conflicted. Here's the thing I'd like to know is from the FBI, how about look at all the communications amongst all these individuals that we know that are related to this case. Let's see how much communication was going on, even with Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland's office. We need to find everything, because again, this is one of those efforts that I think will show absolutely that this was not something that they just one guy charged her, she went to court, was found guilty. This was an operation like January 6th, like Trump's cases. It was managed, I believe, out of D.C., like so many of these cases after 2020. And I really think the DOJ needs to be all over that. And I hope they are. But that's where the answers are, this collusion and that they took in with her case and with every other case related to the 2020 election. It was it's really gross. We can't let that happen. We can never let that happen again. We've got a lot of work to do here. I don't mind supporting, by the way, Cash and Dan Bongino. I like these guys. I love their messages. Pam Bondi. I just want to see they do need to do a much better job of messaging, because the American people are pissed. We've been through hell and we want this stuff fixed, ASAP. And we're not even hearing them even talk about Tina and stuff. When Dan Bongino sends out a message today and all the great stuff he's done, there's no Tina Peters in there. There's no Russia collusion, etc. We need that focus first. It tells you that it's not a focus, and that's not good. We want this stuff prioritized. They don't understand it. We do. There's stuff they need to do. This needs to be prioritized.
Joe, and I'll if I could, one comment to that. It's certainly people understand this in the workforce or if you're in the military, and no feedback is worse than positive or negative feedback. Because you get no feedback, and in these cases, J6, Tina, elections, your mind goes crazy, right? Because at least tell me I'm a shithead or tell me I'm doing a good job. But when you don't tell me anything, now my mind goes crazy. And I think that's what's happening right now on those particular things. That base that elected Trump, I would say respectfully, the war they want to see with a dropping 30,000-pound bombs on is on a deep state. I don't mean to drop and kill people literally, but go attack the deep state. That's what folks who got Trump in want to see, the deep state obliterated.
Absolutely.
And just on that, and I want to thank, first of all, I just want to thank both of you for coming on here. And I'll give you each a minute to, remind everyone where to follow you and how they can support anything that you're working on. But, this Israel-Iran conflict has been a really good example of, I think, the problem that has been endemic in politics in general, but also in some of this tribalistic type of narratives that we see that are both pro-Trump, for Trump, and you see it in some ways in everything, in the elections. It just turns into animosity. But when you see both sides calling for the death and destruction of one people or the other, without any kind of nuance as to who exactly among those people are the ones who are hurting America or stealing from our money. I mean, because it's the same thing. There are, of course, way more bad people than I think many would have liked to have believed years ago, before anyone could see how corrupt all these institutions are and how much money was being stolen from us. And you have the elections and the USAID money, all of these things. But there has to be a point where we still hold on to a respect for humanity and for life itself. So it kind of goes back in my mind to having a little bit of patience for things being done right, but also having some real accountability and very rigid criticism that people should be voicing in the proper ways towards some of these officials. Because when we allow ourselves to be drug into glass Israel, glass Iran, and you're either one side of the devil or you're the other, we don't have the ability to have any constructive conversations. And those types of things are so easily polarized. And then whether it be election machines versus mail-in ballots or whatever, there's no policy that can actually be argued for or against, because you're fighting against two extremes that can't possibly coexist. So that's all I would say. Whether it goes to strategies for getting Tina out, any of these things, we have to remember, and it's why I'm grateful for President Trump in the way that he's handled a lot of these conflicts, is that any other president that I would have seen, I think we would have seen massively more deaths. And I think what I have perceived, at least, is heading off of a lot more chaos that would result from choosing a side or being willing to to take action, or not, or by tacitly, I guess, accepting the narrative that people who are trying to roll us in favor of Israel or in favor of some other agenda would have liked. And I think we should all, as if we view ourselves as independent journalists, we view ourselves as having a voice and being responsible with it, is number one, use your voice and use it effectively while remembering that humanity is what is most important, but also not giving tacit approval to the bullshit and to the things that really don't serve us effectively, other than to give us an emotional reaction and then give us an excuse to be divided from some people that probably doesn't even
to your point, Boone Cutler would say that. He goes, when you're watching a broadcast or news or a speech or something, and someone's trying to push your emotional buttons, you got to ask, why are they doing that? Because there's a science to that. There's a science to get you to stop thinking with the frontal part of your brain and think with the more basic part of your brain.
Interesting. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you guys more. I just think, I think it's important for us. Our job is to shine the light on all this. And, like I said, I don't want to be hurtful or harmful to these guys that are giving up their time away from their families, like Bongino, and dedicating their lives to helping save this country. But we've got to keep them focused on the object. I liked what you said there, Apollo, about just no feedback. It's really important that they continue to provide us information on all these really important things, because if we don't have this stuff fixed, we're never going to be free. Our children will be slaves, and in some sense, some of them probably already are. And so that's what we don't want. And so we want this fixed. So anyways, and by the way, Apollo, people can reach me at joehoft.com and at the Real Joe Hoft on Twitter, and also on Truth and Facebook predominantly. And just because that's where a lot of people go. But anyways, that's where you can. I got a lot of articles going up there, and still posting pieces at Gateway Pundit periodically now, almost daily. So yeah. So anyways, that's where you can reach me. Thanks.
Yeah, and Apollo folks on X, it's unauthorized. You'll see unauthorized a post there. That's from our C4, focusing heavily on election integrity and just candidates who don't become creatures of professional political consultants. And then if they want on Truth Social, it's Semper Fly. It was a Marine aviator, so instead of Semper Fi, it's Semper Fly. And then that 5 July event where the great Joe Hoft is going to moderate, that'll be out here. It's $20. That's all it is. The proceeds are going to go to Mark Cook to allow him to continue his hand count roadshow through the western part of our country. We're going to have Joe Hoft moderating it. Brian Kennedy will speaking on politics or elections and political warfare. Boone Cutler, elections and 5GW. Joe will host a remote-in roundtable with secretaries of state from Wyoming, Missouri, and West Virginia. Treniss Evans will be speaking about ARA, American Rights Alliance, along with the effort with Tina. The great former Rep. Kurt Weldon will be speaking about taking back America and what happened to him, Apollo. He was on our show I think last week, or no, actually Saturday, and the FBI raided his daughter's house. She didn't do anything wrong, and they never followed up, no charges, but the optics, so he would lose the election. And he got targeted by the deep state because he was questioning too much about 9/11. So stand by for what he and Tony Schaefer are going to be revealing about 9/11. And then we'll have Mark Cook that whole afternoon with the help of Shelby Bush and some others and students who will be volunteering there with audience participation, showing paper as a sourced hand count process through voter registration, validation, tabulation, and reporting. We'll have Steve Bannon remote in and give a keynote speech from about 5 to 5:30 Pacific time. And then at the end, Mark Fincham with what he's been doing with Election Fairness Institute. They're helping to also put this on with Sean Taylor, and they've briefed folks in DOJ. And I can tell you, some of you political leaders in Colorado are involved in this, and they've been briefed to some folks in DOJ, the financial web of corruption and malfeasance. Sadly, it's in both parties. He'll talk about that, and it's going to be great. And it'd be the whole day. And again, it's $20. The proceeds go to Mark Cook. And with that $20, you get a breakfast and a buffet breakfast and a buffet lunch.
It's a great deal, man. It's going to be great fun. Thanks. Look forward.
And Joe's going to be there 9, 10, 11. Apollo 9, 10, 11 of August. The Gateway Pundit will have another event at that hotel.
Yeah, look forward to that. We'll share more about that after this event here coming up on the 5th. So
awesome. Well, both of you, thank you very much. And I just want to remind everyone, of course, you can go to tinapeters.us if you want to support her. There are links for her legal as well as personal. And real quick, just so I saw, because I didn't actually know what your Truth Social was, Matt. I think this is it, and I believe this is the
You'll see a picture of a prowler,
post you were talking about.
A prowler
earlier.
flying. So yeah, that is I right there.
Yeah, and this was the post you were talking about regarding the data guy. So thank you for sharing that. Now I know where to follow you. But everybody go and check out him as well as the event and joehoft.com, Real Joe Hoft on X. Guys, I appreciate you both so much, and God bless Tina Peters, God bless President Trump, and all the work that you
and Apollo should be foremost in her mind that whole day on the 5th of July. It'll be an homage to Tina Peters.
Yeah, tune in. Thanks a lot.
Awesome.
Thank you, Apollo. Thank you.
You got it, gentlemen. Tina. Thank you.
Amen.